Welcome to week 3. This is the Monday session, and our theme this week is our minds have a mind of their own, and so do our emotions. So we're going to be focusing on our thinking and feelings this week. Should be interesting, and I hope you begin to see how this can be so helpful in our meditation and mindfulness practices, and just about growing self-awareness. So, as usual, let's just take a quick mindful pause. For this one, I just want you to stop and notice any thoughts that you might be having right now. You could even count your thoughts, if that's possible. And if it's hard to do, that's okay. It's part of what this week is all about, is trying to identify thoughts. So I'll be quiet for a moment. Just be aware of thoughts as they arise and dissolve in the mind. Okay, so I don't know what you thought of when I asked you to do that. You might have thought, gee, this is silly, or you might have thought, well, I'm not having thoughts, which is a thought. So we're really just beginning to see and observe thoughts almost as a neutral observer. Part of the reason why we do this is, if you remember this graph, we talked about this in the beginning, that we get stressed throughout the day by triggers, right? All sorts of things happen to us. And one of the things we can do is to try to relax ourselves, to try to do something to counteract that stress. But I want you to consider these quotes. One, we are not troubled by things, but by the opinions we have about things. So in other words, it's the opinions we have that we add on to the stressor. It's those things that we say to ourselves, I don't like this, or I can't stand that anymore, or I want this to change, or whatever it is that, in a way, rubs salt into the wound and adds to our stress, and in a way increases the stress. Now, the second quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So when we realize that we have a little more control over our thinking process, and that there is this space between stimulus and response, we can choose our response more wisely. And one of the ways we get at that is by being aware of our thinking. And this is the result. So we can bring on the relaxation response, not only by doing something relaxing, but also by doing something with our thoughts. And so this week is really kind of all about that. And so as we look at this poor guy kind of being burdened by all his thoughts, I'm going to talk about thoughts and emotions as being co-arising. And that, their thoughts and emotions are really just part of our mental activity. They're part of the way that we are creative and we communicate, we understand things deeply, we can love, laugh, feel joy. But our thinking and emotional life can also be our greatest tormentor. You know this from coping with a challenging time, right? It might seem that your mind and emotional states are winding up your suffering rather than giving you any kind of respite. So perhaps the first thing to realize is this is pretty normal for most of us. Our mind's primary concern is survival. So it's easy to slip into a hypervigilant state, and our mind reinforces this in unhelpful ways. We fret, worry, and our minds can amplify our fears. So please don't give yourself a hard time if you relate to this. It's part of our evolutionary inheritance. We're hardwired to be good at spotting danger and threats, whether real or perceived, but not so good at dwelling on peace and ease. So science shows that humans have roughly 30,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And for people who have not done any mind training, science also shows that about 75% of these are negative. So you're not alone if you're kind of thinking, wow, it sounds like me. So basically, we've had more than 95% of our thoughts before, and that the truth for many of us is that we've got repetitive negative thoughts dominating our mental landscape, looping round and round. This, by the way, is based on the work of Vijamala Birch, who I've referenced before. Really admire her work as a meditation instructor. She goes on, and traditionally the mind is likened to a monkey jumping around the trees. And if your mind feels like it's jumping all over the place, like a monkey in the trees, and you find it difficult to settle or concentrate, then again, you're not alone. It's just the way human minds are. But there's good news. We can change the default setting of the mind to something much more balanced and stable with training. And that's what we're looking at this week. So how do we train the mind? Well, simply by becoming more aware of our mental and emotional state. For example, becoming aware that when we're that we are angry is very different than becoming lost in anger. See the difference? As soon as we're aware, there's just a tiny bit more space around the experience, and that gives us a moment of choice, that choice I was talking about before. This awareness in this space gives us the chance to choose to come back to the direct experience of the breathing in the body. And in this way, we give the mind another object to focus on as an alternative to being lost in thinking or emotional states. So a great image for this is to imagine that you're on a boat in a choppy sea, and you're being tossed about by the waves. It's very turbulent. Then at a certain point, you drop anchor. The anchor drops down and down and comes to rest on the seabed, and this provides stability for the boat. The sea is still choppy, but the boat is no longer being hurled about. It's got this anchor. Likewise, in the meditation, we'll repeatedly drop this anchor and come back to stability and presence to rest on the body and breath awareness. All right, so let's begin today's meditation. It's called the Breathing Anchor Meditation and being aware of thoughts. Choose your posture with intentionality, choosing what's most comfortable at this time. Taking a few deeper breaths, and on each out-breath, allowing the body to relax and settle and give itself up to gravity. Softening the buttocks, the belly, the back of the body, the base of the skull, and the brain deep inside the head. And inviting our awareness to rest deep inside the sensations, feelings, and movements of breathing. We're not thinking about breathing, but we're resting inside the felt embodied experience of breathing, moment by moment. Resting wherever it feels most comfortable for you right now. Might be the belly, the chest, or the back of the body. And see how this breathing is showing up for you without either expectation or judgment. Just being curious. Seeing if we can allow the volume of the whole body to expand in all directions on the in-breath and subside in all directions on the out-breath. Resting our awareness inside this movement as best we can. And now turning our awareness to investigate thinking. What are you thinking about right now? Can you look at your thoughts rather than from your thoughts? see if you can allow your thoughts to flow through your mind like clouds through a clear blue sky. Let them come and let them go. Getting perspective on your thinking landscape and all the associated emotions. Being aware of the weather. And letting go of any judgment or any ideas that you might have that you shouldn't think while you meditate. This is a very common misunderstanding. Everybody thinks while they meditate. It's normal for minds to think. And the skill is to let go of being so identified with our thoughts. And of course, what you probably find is that you keep bouncing back into getting lost in thinking. But every time you've noticed is a moment of awareness. It's a moment of success in your practice. And then you have the magic moment of choice, and you can choose to shift awareness, drop anchor back into the body, resting and breathing again and again. So anytime as we go through this, when you realize that you're being caught or swept away by thoughts, dropping that anchor to stabilize you, coming back to the breath, resting with your breathing. We all have internal chatter or conversations. So for a moment, just being aware of what thoughts are present. Our minds secrete thoughts like glands secrete hormones. Just be aware of your thoughts. Are they images, words, or simply just there? Observe your thoughts. Let them come and go as mental events. And you can choose to step back from them and just observe. Don't attach to them. Let them pass by as if they're a cloud going by in the sky. If you find yourself carried away in thought, you can disengage with that thought chain, drop anchor, and return to the breath. You can see the thought. Don't be the thought. Separate the thought from who you are. You may notice how some thoughts capture your attention and carry you away. That's okay. When you notice that, become aware of the last thought in the chain without getting pulled into the storyline. You can always drop anchor. Some thoughts are neutral with very little emotional content. Others can actually turn you away and repel you. See if you can notice how a thought affects you. And see if you can touch the thought and let it go without getting caught up in it. We can retrain our whole mental attitude by first learning to recognize these thought patterns, and you might even try calmly naming them mentally, simply as planning, remembering, fantasizing, liking or disliking, worrying, dwelling, whatever it is, just note them. Once we recognize them, we can remind ourselves that they're just visiting. They're not essentially who we are. And we can choose to nurture and stay with the thoughts that are helpful and let go of the ones that are not. And even if unpleasant thoughts hijack us, we can step back from them, simply observing their nature, and when we're ready, letting them go and returning to the breath, using the breath as an anchor to the present moment. Now, when you're ready, beginning to bring the practice to a close, moving the body a little bit perhaps. And if you want, you can form an intention to bring this quality of awareness with you to the rest of the day, to notice when you're worrying, obsessing, or fretting about something, and seeing this noticing as the magic moment of awareness that gives you that choice. You can choose to let go of being so identified with it, even if just for a moment, and you can choose to bring this awareness back to embodied breath awareness, your anchor in troubled times, your home base for the mind. And so when you're ready, finishing the meditation, opening your eyes, reconnecting with the world around you. Well, what was that like? Just pausing for a second, checking in with yourself. That was a little different, right? Kind of being aware of thoughts. And as we've seen in this cartoon before, having thoughts even during the meditation is very common and normal and natural. So part of what we're doing is just noticing which thoughts come up. And on Wednesday, we're going to start talking a little bit about sticky thoughts and our top 10 hits when it comes to thoughts and thought patterns. So I hope that was interesting and helpful and a good start to week 3. Just want to mention these attitudes that can help. Letting go. So sometimes if we find ourselves on a thought train or an association of thoughts that's not helpful, learning to let go. Acceptance of certain thought patterns and not being judgmental about them to ourselves. And non-judging, trying to disengage from those thoughts. And that's kind of what the lesson is that we can step back from them and not let them have power over us, or in a sense, not let them be our master, but we can master our thoughts. All right. So thank you for joining me today. Tomorrow is Tuesday, and you're on your own, trying the thought meditation or another one that you choose, and then we'll come back and I'll be with you again on Wednesday. Thank you so very much. Have a great Monday today and a terrific Tuesday as well. Be well, be mindful. Notice those thoughts.